Critics gave it 19% and called it the worst Keanu Reeves movie ever made. 30 years later, it's the only cyberpunk film that got the future right, and nobody wants to talk about why.
Full disclosure, I am currently experiencing what the medical community calls manic depression with the dial cranked all the way to the manic side. I have been awake for several days. I have been working for basically all of those days. This means you lucky people get another article from the Wise Wolf because my brain has decided that sleep is for quitters and focusing on one thing for more than 6 seconds is apparently off the menu. My head is full of the kind of thoughts that 99% of the human race will never entertain because most of humanity has become, to quote the Pink Floyd song my dad played on repeat when I was a kid, comfortably numb. So here's one more piece I managed to hammer out before I either collapse or my heart decides it's had enough of this arrangement. Turns out massive doses of antibiotics for endocarditis can trigger a manic episode, which is something nobody mentioned at any point during the prescribing process, and which I will be writing on a post-it note and sticking to my bathroom mirror for the next time I feel like crawling out of my own skin at 4 in the morning on a Tuesday. I was going back and forth with a reader in the comments about the movie Hackers, 1995, Angelina Jolie before she was Angelina Jolie. Rollerblading hackers saving the world, peak 90s nonsense, and somehow we ended up on The Matrix, which ended up on Johnny Mnemonic, which ended up with me realizing I haven't actually sat down and watched Johnny Mnemonic in years. So that's the plan tonight, after I finish typing this article with fingers that have literal blisters on them from 15 hours of keyboard abuse. Seriously, why has nobody invented padded keycaps for freelance journalists yet? We need these. Someone start a Kickstarter. I'll be your first customer and your entire marketing department. And that conversation got stuck in my head because I realized something I probably should have figured out 20 years ago. In 1995, William Gibson, the man who invented the word cyberspace before most Americans had touched a computer mouse, wrote a movie called Johnny Mnemonic. Keanu Reeves, 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it is, quietly and without anyone noticing, the most accurate prediction of the 21st century ever committed to film. Not because it got the technology right, because it got the greed right. The premise is simple. Johnny is a courier who had a hard drive surgically implanted in his brain so he could smuggle stolen corporate data across international borders. To make room for the implant, he voluntarily erased his own childhood memories. His mother's face, his father, his school, his 6th birthday. Gone, deleted, because the money was good.
Johnny erased his mother's face to make room for a shipping manifest. His father went next, then his school, and his 6th birthday. He didn't flinch. The money was good. That's how it starts. It always starts with the money being good. Now, 4 years after Johnny Mnemonic, the Wachowskis made The Matrix. 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, cultural phenomenon, leather trench coats everywhere. And here's what's interesting. The Matrix is also about greed, destroying the human species, but it buries that fact so deep in its own backstory that most people walked out of the theater thinking it was about robots. Nobody talks about why the machines exist in the Matrix. Humans built them because it was profitable. When the machines got too smart, humans panicked and scorched the sky to cut off their solar power, destroying the planet's ecosystem permanently, because short-term survival mattered more than thinking past next quarter. The machines didn't enslave humanity out of malice. Humanity was so consumed by its own greed and panic that it literally set the sky on fire, rather than coexist with something it couldn't monetize. The Matrix is a prison built on the ashes of short-term thinking, but the movie hands you a chosen one who can fly and tells you not to worry about how we got here. Just be special. Just fight. Johnny Mnemonic doesn't give you that exit. There is no chosen one. There is no prophecy. Greed is not buried in backstory you'd need a wiki to find. Greed is the first thing you see and the last thing you see, and every scene in between. And the closest thing to a hero is a selfish asshole standing on a garbage pile in Newark, screaming about room service while his brain hemorrhages. Johnny paid a street doctor to cut out every memory that ever made him feel something. Now he pays a stranger to lie next to him in the dark and pretend that counts. The implant didn't just take his childhood, it took the part of him that knew the difference between connection and transaction. Everything is a transaction now.
And that's the part that kept me up after that comment thread. Because Johnny's implant is a metaphor, and the surgery is happening everywhere, right now, without anesthesia. We live in a country where people work 80-hour weeks and call it hustle culture. Where missing your kid's entire childhood, it's rebranded as providing. Where a man will destroy his health, his marriage, his friendships, his ability to sit alone with his own thoughts for 5 minutes, because somewhere along the line, somebody convinced him that net worth and self-worth are the same word. Ridley Scott saw this coming in 1982 when he made Blade Runner, a movie about a corporation manufacturing people and throwing them away when the warranty ran out. Cyberpunk was never about technology. It was always about greed wearing technology like a suit. Gibson just pushed it to the obvious conclusion. What happens when that greed eats so deep into the culture that a man can watch his own mother's face dissolve on a screen and feel nothing because the direct deposit hit?
A hooker asked him where home was, and he didn't have an answer. Not because he forgot the address, because there isn't one. He sold his memories for money and his identity for a career. And now he's sitting in a room full of everything money can buy. And he can't remember a single thing worth living for.
Speaking of which, insulin costs $300 a vial for people whose bodies can't make it. Insurance companies deny cancer treatment over a typo in the paperwork. This is not a broken system. This is the system working exactly as designed. Treating symptoms pays better than curing the disease. Gibson put a company in his movie called Pharmacom that hoards a pandemic cure because the subscription model beats the one-time fix. And in 1995, critics called it cartoonish villainy. 30 years later, it's just Thursday in American healthcare. And the machines in the Matrix, they're what happens at the end of this road. We built them because building them was profitable. We lost control because greed doesn't plan ahead. We burned the sky because we'd rather destroy the commons than share it. Then we made a movie about it that let us pretend the problem was the machines instead of the species that built them. That's the genius trick of the Matrix as a cultural product. It tells you a story about human greed destroying the world, and then gives you a hero so you never have to sit with the fact that you're the villain. Keanu Reeves stands on a garbage pile in Newark and screams. Not action hero screams, broken screams. About room service and clean sheets and the life he sold for a career that is now literally killing him. Every critic in 1995 said he was overacting. 3 decades later, after watching entire generations grind themselves into dust for companies that replaced them with chatbots, the second it saved a nickel, that scene doesn't look like bad acting anymore. It looks like a man who figured out the price of everything he sold about 10 minutes too late.
Johnny is running. He doesn't know if he's running from everything money bought him, or toward everything it took. His mother's face, his father's voice, the kid he was before someone put a price tag on his skull. The things you can't download and can't buy back. The things God made, not man. This is not about a movie. A movie is 90 minutes. This is about the fact that we are building the machines right now. AI is being built because it is profitable, not because it's wise, not because anyone sat down and thought about where it goes, because it makes money. The same greed that made Johnny erase his mother. The same greed that made Pharmacom hoard the cure. The same greed that, in the Wachowskis' backstory, led humanity to build the things that enslaved it. We are doing the exact thing both movies warned us about, in real time, and there is no chosen one coming to unplug us. Water wars are already happening in East Africa. 45 million Americans are food insecure, in the richest country that has ever existed on this planet. The billionaires are building bunkers because they can read a spreadsheet. Gibson saw all of this in 1995 and put it in a movie with a cybernetic dolphin and Dolph Lundgren screaming, "Jesus time," and Henry Rollins ranting about information poisoning. And we laughed at it because the effects were cheap and Keanu was yelling. Johnny Mnemonic was right. The future is a place where people will trade everything for money. their time, their health, their families, their memories, their names. Every piece of themselves that ever meant anything fed into the machine, one transaction at a time, until there's nothing left but the transaction itself. And when there's nothing left to sell, they kneel. We are not headed toward that world. We are standing in it. We are worshipping at its altar.
The Matrix showed us a world destroyed by greed and gave us a hero who could fly above it. Johnny Mnemonic showed us the greed itself and gave us a man screaming on a garbage pile. We picked the one with the flying. We always pick the one with the superhero, the chosen one, because it helps us pretend we aren't the ones to blame for this mess. The ones who could have stopped it, but just stood there gawking until it finally required a rescue that isn't coming. And that is exactly how you build the machines that enslave you. Greed is winning. It's not even close. Help keep the wise wolf howling.